The NFL season is so close, you can almost taste it. But we are heading into the biggest draft weekend of the year. So, of course, it's time to get one of the best experts in the entire industry to come and tell us three players that he is very, very excited to be drafting. I am joined by the fantastic Marvin Eloquin of the FF Ballers. Marvin, how are you doing this fine Friday afternoon?
Doing great. Yeah, like you said, we're right around the corner here of football season. I'm in the middle of some redraft drafts right now. It's slow draft, so it's an exciting time. So I'm excited to be here, excited to talk about some of my favorite players.
Yeah, absolutely. My home league kicks off tomorrow, so I've got 13 friends coming around my house. I've shipped the wife, shipped the kids out. I've got 13 of my mates coming around. And yeah, it's going to be absolute carnage because every year someone does something completely ridiculous and stupid, and yeah, I can't wait. But we're going to dive straight into it now. Your first guest, your first player, what should we say, that you're very excited to be drafting is a rookie. Now, as a dynasty guy, I'm always keen to talk rookies. So, what is it about T Mac that's got you very excited to be drafting him in redraft this year?
Yeah, I know it's maybe a little risky to bank on a rookie, right? When you think about wide receivers, you think about the second year breakouts. That's the most common breakout. If we look at data going back to 2000, it's the second year when they usually take that step. But um, we've actually seen over the last couple of years more and more rookies contribute and break out at the wide receiver position. When you think about Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Lad McConkey, Puka Nakua, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, right? There's so many of them. And what a lot of them have in common is, and I know you and I align with this, is the production really matters coming out of college. And we see that with a lot of these rookie breakouts. So you think about Malik Neighbors, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, even to some extent Puka Nakua had a really good production profile. They were very productive in college. And then the ones that only had maybe one or two productive years, like a Jalen Waddle or Lad McConkey, they were highly efficient on a per target basis in the plus 90th percentile. And that was the case for someone like Lad McConkey, who got the draft capital and was highly efficient in college, and it translated to some great production here in his rookie season. So what does that mean for McMillan? The reason why I love him so much is because he's a blend of all of that. He has a 94th percentile experience adjusted production, 99th percentile in EPA success rate, 99th percentile in EPA per play, very efficient, very productive, and he got that first round capital. So when you look at all of that, he is one of the most complete wide receiver prospects we've seen in recent history. I'd love to hear where you have him in your model, but in mine, he's in the 96th percentile. I love him as the wide receiver one of this class. And then when you look at his situation, right, the clear path to opportunities, the fourth easiest strength of schedule for a wide receiver, and then the potential for a Bryce Young breakout, it all is coming together where the volume is there, the opportunity, right, and the talent is obviously there, being someone as productive and as accomplished as he is. So I'm a big fan of him in that fifth or sixth round ADP. I think maybe a wide receiver one season might be asking for a lot, but it is within the range of outcomes. And for someone that you're drafting in the fifth or sixth round, I mean, I'm happy to take that bet for someone as talented as McMillan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a 95th percentile prospect for me in my model, and I think that you've only got to walk back a year to Marvin Harrison. Obviously, there was some name value attached to that, but to me, they're kind of similar in terms of their prospect levels. And Marvin Harrison was a fringe first round pick in redraft last year. Malik Neighbors was a rock solid second round pick in redraft. We're getting a 3-4 round discount on a similar prospect, and part of that is a little bit of stink on the offense and the quarterback. But for me, what Bryce Young showed down the stretch last year, what he was a top 10 quarterback in PFF grade. He was phenomenal, and just it all seemed to slow down for him, his ability to create out of the pocket and that kind of thing. And I think he is a perfect mesh with T-Mac, because you look at McMillan, he's an all-round receiver. He's not just a big-bodied outside guy that's going to win downfield in that kind of Mike Evans mold. He's got the foot speed. He's got the route run ability that he can win underneath. I think he's going to be used on those in-breaking routes. And I'm really excited about him being used at all three levels of the field. And I think that Adam Thielen being traded away. Yeah, okay, Adam Thielen's never gonna, tear up anything massive and never be a superstar. But it shows the confidence the Panthers have that they're willing to roll forward with a wide receiver core of, 2 second-year guys in Leggett and Coker, and then McMillan as a pure rookie. It's like this year is so critical for the future of the franchise in terms of Bryce Young taking that next step. And they've obviously seen enough in McMillan to say, do you know what? We don't need a vet who's that safety blanket for Bryce Young. We think this wide receiver core is good enough as it is to allow him to develop and progress. So yeah, I've been smashing as much McMillan as I can wherever I can. I think he's a great pick. And as you said, it feels like he's got a really rock solid floor just because of the sheer volume I think he's going to get. But if he comes in and produces like we hope he could, if Bryce Young does take the leap, she said that there's a range of outcomes that could be truly league winning. So yeah, I love this as your kind of your first shout. Are you comfortable reaching potentially and kind of taking him, a few picks ahead of ADP to make sure you're getting him, or are you waiting to secure him in that kind of mid to late fifth, maybe even in the sixth if you can?
Yeah, I'm fine taking him maybe just a few picks, a couple of picks earlier just to get him like in the early fifth or so. But I honestly don't think you really have to reach for him just because there are so many great players in this range where I think you obviously there are other options that you can pivot. And I don't blame anyone for taking someone else in this range. But, to me, the reason why I would be fine with reaching for him is because just, you think about all the things we're saying here, like he has that upside that I'm willing to take the gamble that it's not even that you're taking him in the fifth or sixth round. You're not expecting him to be a wide receiver one, but the fact that that's within his range of outcomes, that's why I'm so high on him. So I'm definitely fine taking him a couple of picks. I don't think you need to reach in the fourth for him. There are quite a few players in there that I like maybe a little more that have that higher floor, but in the fifth round or sixth round, that's where you can really build around a solid roster where he doesn't have to be your wide receiver one. He might even be your flex. And that's where he holds the most value, where he can really pop off and win you some weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've historically been quite a kind of zero RB truther and kind of a zero RB builder. We had JJ Zachariason on the show earlier in the week, and he was talking about how that fifth, sixth round, there's so many wide receivers in that range that are really intriguing and really appealing that it's, you're almost flipping that bit. And it's certainly the way I've been going this year in terms of the first round, second round running backs I'm more happy with. But because there's the depth in that fifth, sixth round with guys like that you can, be comfortable going running back earlier than I normally would. Because I if I'm getting him as my wide receiver 2 in the fifth round, I feel delighted. Whereas I can't think of many years where I'd be getting someone who I perceive to be this good in potentially the fifth round. So yeah, no, I absolutely get that. Before we do move on to your second pick though, if you are finding this for the first time, we are ever so close to 4,500 subscribers. We would love to hit it before the season starts next Thursday. Do us a solid, hit that subscribe button down below. You will not regret it because we've got plenty of in-season content going to be filling your ears. Now, we talked about some of the appeals of the second round running backs there. One guy that seems to be creeping up, and it feels like everybody's in love with him, yet his ADP hasn't moved. Chase Brown, we obviously saw down the stretch last year, from week 9 onwards, he got an insane volume, over 80% snap share in almost every single one of those games, averaged 20.6 points per game, the running back 4 during that period. Is that the Chase Brown you're expecting? Or for second round value, even if you regress slightly, would you still be quite happy?
I expect that Chase Brown, because there's nothing that really tells me right now that we're going to see anything different, right? They don't have Zach Moss there anymore. And I think that's what held him back a little bit early last year, where they were trying to use Zach Moss and then realized, wow, Chase Brown's actually the better running back. Let's lean into him. And, one thing to remember too last year is that even before Zach Moss got injured, we already started to see the Chase Brown emergence where he had multiple RB1 and RB2 performances. If we look at his production since week 4, when his snap share started to increase, he was the RB7.5 PPR points and the RB2 in expected fantasy points or usage value, right? But what really caught everyone's eye was when Zach Moss got injured, his usage in week 8, after week 8, was just tremendous. And that's what I expect. And even if that comes down a little bit, there's still room for him to decline in some usage, but he'd still be a top tier RB1. You look at some of the numbers, he was an RB1 in expected points in my model in 7 of his last 8 games. He led all running backs in usage value with 20.1, above Bijan, above Saquon, above Jonathan Taylor after week 8. He was the RB5.5 PPR points per game. And it's just the elite usage. That's what we want to see. And it's one of the stickiest metrics year over year, as long as it's a strong enough of a sample size, right? And so he's heading into the 2025 season with Zach Moss released, Samaje Perine, Taj Brooks are still on the depth chart, but this backfield truly belongs to Chase Brown. And so that's why I expect his usage to continue. And he also finds himself in an offense that is so dynamic, right? We want players from efficient offenses. The Bengals were top 12 in drop back EPA last year, rush EPA. They were top 5 in success rate, which is really important because they move the chains. That means more opportunities to get downfield, get into the red zone where the more valuable opportunities are. And so you combine all of that, the elite RB1 usage, the now at this point, probably late second round ADP. If he's there in the 3rd round, you smash that every time. That allows you to potentially prioritize wide receiver early and then turn it around and take who I believe could be a top 5 running back, if not even higher this year, just based on the usage and the offense. So I'm a big fan of Chase Brown. I know a lot of people are, but I'm just here to instill even more confidence because I do think he'll be a great running back for fantasy managers this year.
Yeah, I mean, as we've got in the chat, I don't get the Chase Brown hate. It's absolutely wild. This, we talk about last year, all those stats, all those numbers. He only scored 7 touchdowns. There's potential this could be the best offense in the league.
Mm-hmm.
There's potential that he could have significantly more touchdown equity. I quite like Taj Brooks as a guy. I don't see Taj Brooks getting any sort of volume that's going to dink into kind of Chase Brown's work at all. Do you think that the hate on Chase Brown is just draft capital? Do you think if he were a 2nd or 3rd round pick heading into his third year after last year, do you think he'd be a 1st round pick in redraft? Do you think it's that simple, or do you think there's more to the reason why he's still languishing in the 2nd, 3rd round?
I think it's part of that because we've seen people get burned by day 3 running backs who had a really solid rookie year. Like Dameon Pierce is the one that comes to mind. I'm sure there are others in recent years that had a solid rookie season, and then they didn't repeat it in year 2. And I totally get the concern there. But when you look at his production and usage, none of the recent day 3 running backs have reached the level of usage that he had last year towards the end of the season. I mentioned 20.1 expected points. That's like to the level of like CMC, prime Saquon. I mean, like it's ridiculous numbers. And for them to really lean on that, and then also in the offseason, not really bring in anyone, in my opinion, that would supplant him or take over. That was my biggest concern, is that they might go into the draft and take someone in a talented running back class, which would have really tanked Chase Brown's value, but they didn't. And so the fact that we're here now with this depth chart, with his usage from last year, that was, I believe, a preview of what we're going to see this year. I'm very confident in him. And even though there's that draft capital concern, that's definitely a possibility. I just don't see anyone, to your point, taking over this backfield and taking significant touches away from Brown.
Yeah, I think, to me, I consider this quite a similar situation to Kyren Williams last year.
Yeah.
In terms of Kyren Williams, obviously later draft pick, had that phenomenal sophomore season where he put up incredible fantasy production. And then they went and drafted Blake Corum, and people weren't sure if he was going to eat into the workload. Kyren Williams was still a 2nd round pick last year, despite them drafting Blake Corum. Blake Corum was a 3rd round pick. Taj Brooks was a 6th round pick. Like, there's a big difference in resource allocation there. I don't understand why Chase Brown is, as you said, falling into 3rd round in some places. I want pieces of this Bengals offense. I think Chase Brown is electric. I think he's got, home run potential, can score from anywhere on the field, but he's going to see the volume to go with it. So yeah, I absolutely love this shout. I'm trying to snatch as much Chase Brown as I can over the past few weeks, and yeah, it still feels like I'm too low on him in terms of percentage ownership. The final guy you want to talk about, though, Marvin, I'm very excited to talk about this guy, Xavier Worthy. Now, we obviously saw him start to come into his own down the stretch last year, but Rashee Rice going to miss the first 6 weeks, but will be back. Hollywood Brown going to be healthy. They've added Jalen Rawls in the draft. Maybe Noah Gray emergence. Still Travis Kelce knocking around. Do you think there's enough volume in this offense for Xavier Worthy to hit at ADP?
Yeah, I do think, and that's one of the points I was going to bring up. This Chiefs offense over the last few years has been top 5 in pass rate over expected pretty consistently. So that indicates in neutral situations they want to pass the ball, unless they all of a sudden without a change in really the coaching staff, they decide to change their offensive philosophy. I expect them to pass the ball a ton with Patrick Mahomes. And yes, Travis Kelce is still here. You have DeAndre Hopkins, who is no longer there, so that helps a little bit. But you still have Rashee Rice is going to come back, but is suspended, and then Marquise Brown is still there, right? But I do think this offense just I want a piece of this offense. Xavier Worthy, to me, was one of my favorite prospects coming in last year. So I'm trying to like separate that and try not to be too biased. But when you look at what he did towards the end of last year, I know it took him a while to get there. Week 11, we started to see him carve out a little more of a consistent role after their bye week. And then week 14 onward is when we really saw the snap rate spike to 80%. And from there on up until into the Super Bowl run, right? So this is right around a 7-game sample size. Xavier Worthy averaged a 25% target share, surprisingly only a 21% air yard share, when earlier in his rookie year, he was getting the deep targets, but they started to rely on his after the catch ability. He averaged 43 yards after the catch per game, which is really solid. He actually averaged 10 opportunities per game, and that's not all targets, it's rush attempts too, which is great for 10 opportunities is great for a wide receiver. 41% of his opportunities resulted in a first down. And then he averaged 16.7 half PPR points per game in his 7 games, final 7 games, including the postseason. That's really solid production for someone who was an integral part of the offense as the Chiefs made that deep playoff run. And like I mentioned, it's the situation he enters in is slightly favorable, at least for the first 6 weeks, in my opinion, right? So Rashee Rice is suspended. He will be back, and there's definitely risk for him to lose some of those opportunities when he returns. But the upside, in my opinion, is too high to pass up in the 5th round of redraft leagues. We talked about some of the appealing wide receivers in that 5th, 6th round. To me, Worthy is one of them, and it would not shock me if he started the year as a wide receiver 1 within the first 6 weeks. But there's also, in my opinion, the potential that he just established himself as a staple of this offense, right? Even when Rice is back. And so a pass-heavy offense, a potential to carve out an early season role that will probably win you weeks. And then I do think he'll remain involved even if Rice comes back. There's definitely risk there. That's why he's only a 5th or 6th round pick right now. But I'm a big fan of Worthy, and I'm trusting that the receiver we saw towards the end of last year, the receiver we saw in college, will lead to what I believe a year 2 breakout this season.
Yeah, I love the player. It's similar to you. I was very high on him as a prospect. I had him as my wide receiver 3 last year. I was really excited about what he could be. The love is the positives, as you said. After week 14, we saw that shift in usage. He had what I class as manufactured touches, which is screen and rush attempts. He had 19 of those after week 14 last year. Normally, anything over 1.5 a game is like an elite number. He was at 2 a game. Over the last couple of years, the only person that's been above that was Chris Godwin, who got up to like 3 manufactured touches, and Deebo Samuel. And that's about it. Like, to me, when you're manufacturing touches for a receiver, it's because you want the ball in their hands, and he's that. And I also think this year we're going to see the Chiefs start to push the ball downfield more. I think Xavier Worthy's got that top end speed. We didn't see it a huge amount last year. We saw it at the start of the season, struggled to come off sometimes, but I think we are going to see him stretch down the field. My sort of only thing that is I'm not fully on board is that I am nervous. We saw the usage, the production all spike without Rashee Rice, and it's like, I've just got that little thing in the back of my mind of, I think Xavier Worthy's good. I think he's really good. But I do worry when it starts to matter for us for fantasy, you know, as we get towards those playoff times. Are we going to see a reduction in those manufactured touches? Are we going to see a reduction in the, you know, the dump offs and things like that? And he's going to go back to being that downfield stretching receiver, and they're going to slot Rashee Rice back in where he is. Do you have concern there, or do you think that the cost kind of precludes that?
Yeah, I do think it's baked into the cost a little bit, because if we knew he would be the wide receiver on this offense, he would have the ADP of what I believe would probably be second round, third round, right? So you get a little bit of a discount here because of that. It's definitely, that's the risk you take with Xavier Worthy. And you know, the good thing is part of what, you know, you do in fantasy is you can also try to trade him at his peak. and that's also a scenario you can explore down the line. But yes, it's absolutely within the range of outcomes. That's why he's priced the way he is. I just truly believe if you have someone as dynamic as Worthy, and they start to, if what we believe happens and he does have a productive first 6 games, I just don't see the Chiefs scaling that back and saying, well, Rice is back. Let's go back to the offense that we had, you know, 2 years ago and feature him, or a year and a half ago, right? I just don't see that, because they invested in him. Worthy right now is probably one of the key pieces for that offense going forward. And so if he does break out the way I expect him to, I just expect him to be at least still heavily involved with those manufactured touches, likely scaled down a little bit. So we probably won't see the 17 half PPR points we saw last year in his final 7 games. Maybe closer to that wide receiver 2, maybe flex production. But again, that's probably what you're expecting out of a 5th, 6th round wide receiver in your draft, but he can actually still win you games in the first 6 games in 6 weeks too. So definitely risk, but I think the upside is, like I said, too high to pass up there.
Also, let's be honest, this offense is good enough to have 2 functional wide receivers for fantasy. Like, just because Rashee Rice is coming back, you know, I'm not expecting huge things from Travis Kelce this year. I'm not expecting huge things out of the running back room, outside of maybe like a, you know, a volume-based RB2 in Pacheco. But there's absolutely a world where they have 2 functional wide receivers. I also think maybe, you know, I'm taking kind of the cool, calm math side of my brain and buying into the narrative a bit. But the world's almost seems to have checked out on Patrick Mahomes a little bit. Like, you know, there's a lot of Josh Allen, a lot of Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow love, maybe Jane Daniels. I do wonder if we just see Patrick Mahomes come out and kind of go scorched earth and just be like, yeah, I'm still the king. I still hold the, you know, the championship belt. Don't forget how good I am, just because I lost 1 Super Bowl kind of thing. So there is a world where we could see Patrick Mahomes roll back the years and put up a phenomenal year. And if he is going to do that, you definitely want as many parts of this offense as you can, because it's going to be good fun for fantasy.
Yeah, 100%. And I completely agree, because I had Patrick Mahomes on my fantasy team in a couple dynasty leagues last year, and there were definitely some disappointing weeks. But you look at some of the underlying metrics, right? To your point, he's still as efficient, as productive as he is when you look at metrics like EPA per play, completion percentage over expected. He's still so good. And so I'm banking on that. I'm banking on this pass-heavy offense. And like I said, I just want a piece of this offense, whether it could be Travis Kelce. Maybe we see a comeback there, but I'd rather bank on Xavier Worthy right now. And potentially Rashee Rice, depending on how far his ADP drops, that, you know, you can still draft him and he'll have value towards the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but it's hard to disagree with all 3 of your picks, quite frankly. I think you've absolutely nailed it with all 3, Marvin. Thank you ever so much for coming on. It is always an absolute pleasure. I love getting to pick your brain a little bit. Remind everybody that is watching, where can they find you and where can they find your work?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Once again, this is always fun. You guys can always find me on X or Twitter at @FF_Marvin E. My work will always find its way on there, but I'll be writing some weekly articles with the Fantasy Footballers. So that'll come out on Wednesdays, a Dynasty report, so talking about prospects, and then an expected points article in the DFS pass that'll come out on Thursday. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, let's go win some leagues here. This should be a fun season.
No, absolutely. Go and check out Marvin's work. It is awesome. I thoroughly enjoy digging into it. He is yeah, a very sharp brain, and yeah, I try and pick it as often as I can. But if you haven't hit the subscribe button on the way out, make sure you're doing that now. The season is just around the corner. We'll have in-season content, plenty for you every day of the week, and get you ready to win those titles.